Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another Postman live stream, another one of our How We Built It live streams, where we take one of the things that the Postman team has worked on and we chat with the people that worked on that thing to kind of like look into what happened, why we did it, how we did it, and all that. My name is Arlemi. I'm a developer advocate at Postman, and I'm based in rainy London at the moment. And I'm joined by two people from the Postman team, which I'll let them introduce themselves. Tim, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, I'm, hold on, I'm typing in, realized my name wasn't all there. So I'm Tim. I'm a senior researcher on the labs team at Postman. I was the lead developer on our new GraphQL stuff, based in Richmond, Virginia. And yeah, happy to be here.
Cool. Shobhit, you go.
Yep, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Shobhit, research analyst at Postman with a specialization in design. And I've been based out of Bangalore, India for a while. And I've been part of the labs team for a year and a half now. And I've been helping the team visualize and build client interfaces for different API technologies. And my role is to sort of make sure that the interfaces that we build handle the complexities of those technologies gracefully. I'm sorry,
So good.
Something in my throat. But yeah, and they also make the community, and yeah, not only they handle the complexities of those technologies gracefully, but they also make the community of developers more productive and also resonate with the product philosophy that we have here at Postman. And in the past, I have worked on client interfaces for gRPC, WebSocket, Socket.io, and recently GraphQL.
Cool. And you're both, so both of you are part of that labs team that we call it Postman. Who wants to tell us more about that team and what they do? You mentioned multi protocols, but maybe there's other things you can talk about.
Tim, you want to go or should I?
I'll let Shobhit. You're a little more longer than I have by like 6 months, so you must know way more about it.
All right. So yeah, I'll start from the introduction of the team itself, and then sort of move on to how we sort of. Should I talk about why we built? Like how we built GraphQL right now? Or do I?
No, we'll get there soon enough. Don't worry.
Okay.
Just
in that
overview
case,
of the team and what the team is in charge of.
All right. So as we like to see it, a labs team within Postman is sort of a startup within the organization itself, like startup within the startup that is Postman. And it's built up of small agile teams focused on different initiatives, sort of involving 0 to 1 ideas. And one of such brilliant ideas, Flows, went out of beta yesterday. And each of us wear multiple hats within the team. You could have guessed it from mine and Tim's title, which says researchers and not designer or developer. And how we work within labs is we make informed assumptions, build fast with very little dependency on other teams. and try to validate those assumptions as quickly as possible. And the initiative that Tim and I are a part of is called Multi-Protocol, which aims to make Postman like sort of your go-to tool for building APIs, irrespective of the underlying technology that powers them. And you have seen stuff coming off from our team previously. It's been WebSocket, gRPC, Socket.io, everything that comes up after HTTP has been sort of brought out by our team. That's all. That's labs and how we move within labs.
Cool. That leads me to a section that we started the live stream with, which is in case you missed it, and we're going to talk about one of the things that your team released. So let me share my screen, and I have two things to share for this in case you missed it. The first one being Postman flows. Some of you may know about Postman flows, which is the local way to craft API application or to build workflows based on APIs in Postman. We've had that in beta for about, I want to say, 6 months to a year, probably, that we've released that, and it just went GA yesterday. So anyone that wants to play with this can now open their Postman app, find the flows icon in their workspace, and start building stuff. But I will be sharing that link with people so you can read more about it. The reason why I say it's good leading into that is your team has been working on this for that whole time, and it's one of the achievement of the labs team to finally reach GA for flows. And we're kind of looking forward to see what people will build with this. There's also tons of other stuff that's been released over the last few months, or the last week even, because we had the March release. But instead, spoilers for next. Instead of telling you all about it today, what I'm going to do, I'm going to invite you to join that session, which is happening next Wednesday, or 2 weeks, 2 weeks on Wednesday, where we're actually going to go through everything that's new in Postman since 1st of January. So there's going to be a lot of content, but instead of rushing through them in 2 minutes now, we'll spend an hour. We'll look at all of the different places. So it can be developer experience, it can be governance, it can be API design, API testing, etc. And we look at all of this. So I'll be sharing this link as well in the chat. So that was in case you missed it. Let's now jump into what we're here for, which is GraphQL. And I'm going to start with a general question to Tim, which is, can you let us know what is GraphQL? Big question.
Oh, yeah. So GraphQL, it's a graph query language. You don't really need the graph part, but mostly it's for querying APIs. So it's kind of what we already do at Postman is if you have an API and you want to query it, you send something. And GraphQL is that way of defining that something and say, like, I want these things and this part, and I want this kind of selection. And so instead of kind of the more typical, which is like, give me book number 3, you can say, I want these parts of this book and give me a little details about the author and a little details about how much it could be, or I really want all these things, but nothing about the author. And so it's this really kind of interesting way of saying very specifically what you want from your API. And so it's kind of interesting for us because it's pretty much standard to build it on HTTP. So we already talk that language and we can already send those requests. And so it's like we've already supported it. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But there's some really interesting parts of building with GraphQL. Like you have the schema that defines like what you can get, and you can really kind of say specifically, I only want these parts. And so they talk a lot about over/under fetching, which means basically just pick exactly what you want. But part of that is the flip side is, what do I want? And so we've really kind of taken a look at understanding the schema and really helping the user say, like, understand these huge graphs that have been created lately of like, I have the world. That's actually can be a kind of overwhelming feeling of you can get literally anything.
And so whenever I think of GraphQL comparing to like the REST interfaces, I think about the benefits in terms of like bandwidth, for example, right? Instead of querying everything and then letting the front end team like figure it out, basically. Like so it has that. You mentioned the list of books. I can just get the details that I need on that page, and then on that details page, maybe I get more. And so I'm assuming bandwidth or like data is one of the benefits. Is there other ones?
Yeah, I think for me it's really about where that coordination happens, because let's say we'll continue the bookstore. Like, you get a list of books, and it used to be the front end would wait, get those, and be like, all right, now I got to go get the list of authors for those books, and I'll wait, and I'll got those. All right, now I need to go and like query some other endpoint to get like the prices for those books that are in the cart, and then I'll wait, and then it's all happening kind of whoever wanted it, and now it's more on the servers to say, all right, they asked for this. I don't have to go to this database because they didn't ask for authors, but I can go just here and fill this in. What's really cool to me, and we already got a cool question on Federation, is like, let's say a different team is in charge of authors versus books, and like, unbeknownst to the front end, you're going to like two different backends, two different teams, spreading this around. And so I think it moves the complexity. It's always going to be hard writing APIs and calling them, but it's more on like the servers to figure out how to do all that coordination, which I think is really cool.
So I'm assuming the answer to that question from Srikant is yes, we will be talking about Federation?
I mean, a little bit. From a generally, like, we at Postman talk to GraphQL. And so if you're using Federation, we talk that because it's just generally GraphQL. And if you're not, you can support that. I think we could have a whole nother conversation on like what to do with subgraphs and how to set up your collections to do those. Probably dive into that a little later.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So we have the base. We know what GraphQL is. We talk in this live stream about how we built it. One thing that I do want to mention, and I'm assuming most users that are watching this live stream know, is that we've supported GraphQL in the past in Postman. I'm just going to share that blog from 2019. I think that's how far I could go. And I found from Postman v7.2. So we are now on 10.12, I think. June 2019, we released the first support of GraphQL in Postman, which was kind of like how you mentioned it, Tim. It's like we had HTTP, we knew how to do that, so we added GraphQL on top. And that leads me to my next question, which now I'm going to give Shobhit a chance to answer, is why did we redo it? Because I feel like, well, I guess, yeah. Why did we do a new version of GraphQL in Postman when we already had that 7.2 from 2019 version of GraphQL support?
Wait just a second. I think there were some issues. But could you, Arlemi, repeat that question?
Yeah. So the question was, why did we redo GraphQL support in Postman? Oh no! Whenever I ask him a question, he disappears. I need to stop asking questions. Let's see. Let's give him a. We knew from before we had discussed that he may have issues with internet. Mm-hmm. So let's give it a few minutes, and then in the meantime, I'm actually going to jump in and share. Or maybe, Tim, do you want to jump into the start of the demo?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm seeing chat
Yeah,
again.
when Shobhit gets back, he'll talk about the why. I'll just show you the what.
Let me do. There we go.
All right, so I'll say the kind of first step with these new protocols is as we integrate them tighter, it'll be a little different. But the first question is always like, where is this? How do I get to it? And so we have this new button here, and we get this cool GraphQL request. And these are some of the other ones we've added. We graduated gRPC a little while back, and now we're tackling GraphQL. You might, and so this is, I think, kind of where our like focus has started to really kind of try and help the user. Like, you have this API of a ton of things. Let's say we know we're just given a URL by some teammate or something, like go query this URL, and like typically it's this. You're like, what the heck do I do with this?
Yeah.
Like we're good. We have autocomplete, and like if I knew how to write GraphQL, with like, okay, I can like figure it out. But we really want, we have this schema that's super powerful, describes the whole entire API. Let's do something with it. And we really wanted them to like go from having no knowledge of GraphQL in general, of the API in general, and say like, sure, this looks good. I don't know what this mess is, but I'll go send a query, and cool, it worked.
Yeah, that's actually. So me being a person that doesn't use GraphQL much, I know in the past we've done live streams with different GraphQL APIs, and we've had autocomplete for a little while, but introspection was a thing that we didn't really support, and that's a lifesaver for me. Just seeing all of the schema there and being able to just like toggle stuff on and off.
Yes, and I'll say we. I'm not sure how recently, but we support introspection in the HTTP one, which is kind of what drives the autocomplete, but it's still really kind of.
Well, you need to know how to write the query out, right? Like you don't have the UI side of the thing, which is
and so it was really, a lot of these companies that we've talked to, they really work hard on these schemas, and you never see them. And now you do. And now you can say like, oh, I can also add some extra stuff. That's cool. And it was a lot of little things like, how do you send an object? Is this JSON? Do I like quote stuff here? And so even more advanced users that kind of knew how to do it, is still really nice to be like, okay, that's how we can put it in here, and kind of go back and forth, and hopefully maybe learn as you go the GraphQL. And ideally, like if you're super advanced, we don't mess with you. You can still kind of just do it here and maybe use this to help you find the fields. I think we really tried, and I think Shobhit will talk more about it, of like helping users wherever they are along their journey.
So we'll actually move back. I think Shobhit is fully back. You can see him. You can see him move, which is good.
Yes.
We have a crossover question first from Ulysses about: are you going to integrate the GraphQL requests in flows? I don't know if you have the answer to that, but here's a question for someone who wants to take it. Otherwise, I'll take it.
We do not have it within flows right now, but in future, I do not see a reason why not. It could really enhance the GraphQL experience of users on Postman. So I would say it's a positive note. I'm not sure when we will start working on it, but yes, I would say it's in our radar, and I'd be glad to work on it really soon.
And one thing I'll mention on top of that is the way we look at users' requests, etc. The more we have someone requesting something, or the more we hear about use cases for a specific thing, the more information we have and the better we can implement it. So do post on GitHub. We have a GitHub called Postman Labs where we take all feature requests. So add it there, kind of talk about what you're willing to build or what you're looking to build with it. And the product team is always looking at that and building based on that feedback. So we have Shobhit back. So I'll ask the question again. Hopefully that doesn't break your internet. So the question was, why did we redo GraphQL when we already had some sort of support for it?
Right. So yes, GraphQL is not really new for Postman, and users do have the option to create and run their GraphQL queries from within an HTTP request. And it's been like that for a while, 3 years or 4 years now.
Yeah.
And but the problem is an HTTP wrapped GraphQL client comes with the limitations of HTTP itself. And when it comes to GraphQL, GraphQL doesn't really mandate the use of any specific protocol in the transport layer, which means you can build your GraphQL API over TCP, WebSocket, etc. So if we wanted to support GraphQL across multiple protocols and let users leverage all its capabilities, it had to break free from its HTTP shell. So what we did is we created a new request type for GraphQL within Postman, just like you have HTTP, WebSocket, and gRPC. And being an independent request type of its own, the GraphQL client can not only work with HTTP, but also support use cases like subscriptions over WebSocket connections. And most importantly, this gave us the ability to sort of craft an experience that's curated just for GraphQL and GraphQL users without having to make any compromises at all. So we could build interfaces like the Query Explorer that Tim was showing you a while ago, that gives you an interactive view of your schema and lets you visually build your queries with just a few clicks. And we're also right now building a documentation view that's curated just for GraphQL requests, sort of harnessing the powerful features of the technology. And all these could have been hard to do within the boundary of HTTP. But the list of reasons for reattempting GraphQL sort of goes a little further. So if you have been following the improvements we've been making to Postman over the last year, you might already know that we have been working on extending the client support for a range of APIs that used to be HTTP only before. And with the release of each new client as a team, we sort of strive to learn a little more about the expanse of the API landscape itself. And this also helps us build patterns that could scale up to other similar technologies. So the pattern we built for Socket.io could scale up to our recent addition, which is SSE. So I was really happy about that. And basically with the release of WebSocket client, we learned about the world of basic APIs, and with gRPC, we learned how schema-driven APIs are built and consumed. And with GraphQL, we wanted to learn how to build for query type protocols. And from the knowledge that we gained from GraphQL, we could, with that, we could bring support for similar technologies in the future. And even among the query types, GraphQL was sort of a calculated choice. It wasn't like one of us waking up one day screaming, "Yeah, I have to build GraphQL." It was a calculated decision. As I said, over the last couple of years, we have been observing significant growth in GraphQL, growth of GraphQL, and it's got a lovely community of proactive users. And we have had users coming to us via GitHub, consumer calls with like a ton of interesting ideas around what they would like in a GraphQL client. And all these excitements around GraphQL, just all those things factored in, we couldn't just wait to build it. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think that last part is when I mentioned we look at feedback and we build on top of that. I think GraphQL is a great example of that because we had some sort of support like wrapped on top of HTTP. We've been getting requests to like add different things, and by looking at this feedback, by asking people what they wanted, and we'll get a bit more about the whole like feedback loop that we've created to work on GraphQL later. But yeah, it's something we do look at. We already had a short demo. Tim, was there anything else you wanted to show in the demo?
Yeah, a few more things.
Okay, let me go back.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think one thing that Shobhit mentioned is we support subscriptions now. And so part of our journey from adding WebSockets and servers and events is subscriptions. Currently, we support WebSockets. We're working on the servers and events kind of protocol of subscriptions in GraphQL. But, we can just kind of do them now. We've done the hard work of kind of connecting with Postman with WebSockets. And so one of these features that had been requested often and we wanted to do and everybody wanted is, we can kind of just do it, and it's great. I think it's really interesting to me as we've kind of looked around at the public GraphQL APIs. We haven't seen much subscriptions, but they are very common at like the private API level. And I think this will be a really helpful way of kind of debugging. And so you'll see like the more advanced use case here is like, I want to just kind of do all this together. I want to like run a mutation, want to do we have kind of these more advanced features that I mentioned earlier. We kind of try and follow you as you learn. And so if you have a like, say, want to get to GitHub and they have their authorization and need.
So you can pull that from the schema as well.
Mm-hmm. And so we go from like a little kind of hello example to like big gigantic schemas like this just fine. And it kind of works really well. So we've tried to integrate kind of our foundation of HTTP still is there, but with our kind of new approach. And so like all the things that people have come to expect from Postman, let's do something like that. Tests, authorization, header, all the things that people already expect we can build on. And then we can really focus on saying like, if you're writing or working with GraphQL, we can really tailor this experience for you. I think it's been really good.
Yeah, it's like, so you demoed a lot of stuff. If you go back to the other request, the simple one, there's just one thing I was wondering about. So you kept going to the little arrow next to the query and then selecting different things. So is that, can you pick if you want to do like a mutation, a subscription, etc.? Is that what it actually does?
Yeah, so you can pretty much just, wherever you're focused, so if you're working on your query, we'll kind of select the query and can send it. If you're working in here, we'll be down here and doing that correctly. There's a few other ways to do it. If you're kind of done and you just kind of want to run through it, you can kind of go this way.
But it defaults to the one you're focused on if you don't select another one. Okay.
So the one you're kind of like in the zone on is the one you can run at the time.
Nice, that's very cool. So yeah, you showed that. You showed like query mutation, subscription. Then we looked at like kind of loading a gigantic schema from GitHub. The tests are, so it's interesting as well, like the seeing the test on this type of request and how they split in the, it's a different way to present them in the UI, but admittedly it does the exact same, right? Like you use child.js the same way you would do for like HTTP request. It shows at the same place and you can filter by like pass, fail. So people that are like familiar with Postman should not be lost.
Yes.
Let's move on to. Actually, pass is like. Can you show the filters again?
The what?
For the filter for the test
Oh, yeah.
results.
Mm-hmm.
Pass skip. Oh yeah, there's the skipped one. That's the one I was missing. Okay, cool. Okay, let me remove your screen. So we have a question from Srikant again. Let me look at it. Guys, once user feedback, can we just see all requests consisting gRPC, GraphQL, and HTTP under one collection? It is a pain to handle different APIs. Good question. And I again, once again, you should provide that feedback. With I'm pretty sure we already have an issue open for that one. It does make sense to have stuff under the same collection. I can't say yes we're going to do it. I can't say when we're going to do it, but I'm just going to say yes. It makes sense to do that, and we're looking for more feedback on the use case to have everything under the same umbrella. I think, do we already support different async protocol to be in the same collection? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have that, and we have HTTP that is a separate collection.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think we can say yes. We're aware of it. It's a pain point for us as well because we're kind of working with different things. So we feel the pain and we're working on it. I think GraphQL is the first one where we want to see how like the transition works, because you could have them in this HTTP collection or in this new collection format, and so we're working hard on it now, and that's definitely
Okay.
On the roadmap.
See, I did my best political speech there. I just wasn't sure what we could say. It's like, please.
I'd say I'd even go a little further and say soon.
Wow. Okay. Okay, let's move back to the topic before we leak everything. So the question that kind of went through at the start when I asked you like what team you were on and what you were part of. So the you're part of the labs team, and we mentioned the labs team was in charge of building this. So why the labs team? Why not another squad?
All right. So it is actually that part, everything that I talked about, labs team at the starting, sort of makes it a little bit clear why we were sort of assigned to do it. So the thing with GraphQL is that it was going to be a new experience altogether, and we had to rethink, we had to do it from scratch. So we really the labs team picked it up because we had some experience working on schema-driven protocols like gRPC, and also working on different protocols across like the area landscape. So that being said, since we were like doing things pretty much from scratch, we said, okay, we'll take the initiative and we'll build support for GraphQL. And since we have like a very small team within the labs that really doesn't have a lot of dependency on others, we could move faster with the progress of GraphQL. We could like take some bold risks there as well. And it was actually like I'd say it was literally just 3 or 4 of us coming together, sort of building this entire thing out from scratch. So Samashish, who's heading the labs vertical right now, Udit, who's leading the multi-protocol initiative right now, and I would meet every day trying to come up with sketches that outline the user experience, also keeping Tim in loop to make sure we're not going too crazy with the ideas. And once the designs were ready, it was all just Tim putting his brilliant mind into action and figuring out how to build it. And we also had Rohan and Josh from our team helping us plug in some of the magical features like scripts. that Tim just showed. And I'm going to spoil it right now. Josh actually worked on building support for mocking responses from a GraphQL schema itself. Tim's going to talk more about it later. And once we were ready for open beta, we had Sterling, Doc, Meenakshi sort of helping us out with managing the external communication and shaping the client as per the feedback from the users. So yes, it was started out as a small team work, but as you can see right now, we have like a lot of minds working on it. But yeah, the reason for labs being assigned to do this was we had some experience working on different protocols before, and we understood the schema type protocol itself, and we had a smaller and more agile team.
So the super mighty team. Cool. So you mentioned one thing, which is we didn't want to go too crazy, and that leads me to my next question. So you mentioned not wanting to go too crazy. We mentioned having like input from the community to get started with, right? Like the community kind of let us know we need some stuff. My next question is how did you validate that you were building the right thing, right? Like as you were, or as Tim was like coding along and putting all of these things together. How did you make sure you were not going completely the wrong way?
Yeah, so some of it is, you kind of build for yourself and you kind of know. But we knew with this one especially, it's a really, I think Shobhit called it a lovely community earlier, which I think is perfect. It's really nice. And so some of it was Sterling, who's kind of our engineering manager, and I went to GraphQL Summit, started chatting with the people kind of really trying to get GraphQL as part of their org and this thing. And so we've, over time, kind of set up a group of champions that really, I think, kind of represent the different stages of GraphQL in different companies. And it was really valuable to kind of have this kind of group of insiders. They might be like the creators of GraphQL down to, we're just trying to see if we can use it in our company, and to really kind of bounce some ideas off. We're pretty far along as we started to integrate them, but it was already really valuable, just like small things like what do you kind of expect and you click on this, like what do you think it's actually going to do? Or we've gotten a couple where it's like it'd be really nice if it could do this, and you're like, it's actually that button up there. That's a good feedback. And so it was some part of labs is we can kind of try different ways of rolling it out. And so the one we picked for this one was to have kind of like a small select group that we tried first before going into this beta that we did a month ago, I think. Yeah, almost exactly a month ago.
So they did get access to it and they could play around with it, or was it mostly calls, like prototypes, mocking?
Kind of both. They had access a little early, and then it was a lot of Doc and Sterling kind of just really kind of chatting and working with them and seeing what their pain points were with using GraphQL and Postman.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's very cool. I know we've done some stuff in the past, but not at that scale, I think. Or maybe not with that many like big companies or people that were that much involved in the technology that we were doing. So that's been very, like, from my side, from the developer relations side, seeing one of the like engineering team working on a feature, work that closely with the community champions, etc., to get to where we are now. That's been very, very good to see. Let me look. Obviously, when I look away, it's just that I'm looking at my script, so I asked the right question. So the next question is...
Well, we don't have a script.
we have we've talked about building the right thing, but for most people that have been engineering or design or any team that's creating something, there's often, I'm not actually going to say always, I'm sure some people can actually create something without any issues, but there's often some challenges along the way, whether you're like maybe we mentioned maybe you took a wrong turn and you're starting building something that's not needed. There may be different reasons. That's one of the questions that I had for, I guess, for the both of you, which is what are some of the challenges you've faced along the way?
Sure. I think I can talk a little bit about the challenges that we faced during the design phase, and I'll just hand it over to Tim to share his experience and the challenges we faced during development. So when we started building GraphQL, it was unlike any other protocol that we had added support for in the past. It's, as I mentioned, it's got a significant growth trajectory, massive user base, and increasing popularity and interest from the builders community. So we were a tad bit scared. Although in labs we believe in moving fast and refining the features and interfaces iteratively, we knew we can't do the same for GraphQL. We couldn't just leave out a few important things and build them later. It would have been an injustice to the lovely GraphQL community that we have. So we took our time to trying to get back to the basics, asking ourselves why do users love Postman, to draw from there what the first release of GraphQL could look like, and we boiled down all of our ideas and our focus down to one simple idea, an idea that worked for HTTP in the past, WebSocket, gRPC in the past as well, and we saw how could we bring that into GraphQL as well, which was how could we make the client experience most intuitive for users who are starting out with GraphQL, and sort of layer the export use cases on top of it. So if you are someone who understands GraphQL end to end, you're going to have no problem working with Postman client. But if you're new to GraphQL or haven't even heard about it yet, Postman becomes a great tool to start your journey. And in this process, we not only cater to existing users of GraphQL, but also contribute to the growing GraphQL user base by educating new users what they can do with it. So the interface has some subtle but powerful optimizations in place that flatten the learning curve and make your workflow faster. Tim has already shown quite a lot of things, but there are a few things that I would like to highlight as well. So, Arlemi, can I share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead. You might need to reshare it again because you dropped.
Yeah.
Let's see.
All right. Yeah. So here I have my Postman interface, and now I go to this window that says create new, and I see, oh, there is a new protocol or something new that has popped up. So I might know a little bit about GraphQL. I might not even know anything about GraphQL, but I could be curious enough just to go and click on it just to see what it does. And here we have our GraphQL request interface. And now imagining myself as somebody who doesn't understand GraphQL a lot or is fairly new to it, I intuitively go and click on this URL bar. Now there is this little pop-up that tells me, are you new to GraphQL? Like, do you want to try out Postman's echo service? And this saves me like at least 15 minutes of work trying to go ahead, find out the public documentation, and come back to Postman and try it out. So that part is all sorted out. You enter your graph, you click on that little button that says use Postman's echo service, and your schema is automatically loaded. You don't have to care about, don't have to worry about that. And again, the schema explorer itself is a interactive visual query builder. So you do not need to know GraphQL query language in order to create your first query. You could just go ahead and browse through the schema, select a few things, Yes, Shobhit, and go ahead and hit query. This is one way of doing it, but we know for a fact that if you even with all these optimizations and these automations in place, it could still be a little weird or a little unintuitive to get started with the GraphQL without understanding the query language itself. And the reason being, even if you have your, even if you go ahead and select your first, like the first element of the list, there are chances that it wouldn't simply work. You would have to select the leaf elements as well, pass on a few arguments, and do all these things. So Tim actually came to me like a month and a half ago, saying that Shobhit, this isn't working. So there is still something missing. I can't just expect users to go ahead and click on all these elements individually in order to build a query, in order to build a query that's going to work. And he said, what if I could click on just select button, and it just magically creates my entire query for me. I don't have to worry about anything. So wait, got a little bit weird it out. Yeah, so I click on this, it creates my query, and without having to worry about anything else, I just go ahead and hit query, and I have a valid response. So all these tiny little things packaged with all the goodness that you have from Postman, like the collection, the mighty powerful collection. If I do GraphQL and create and save collections and your scripts, along with your documentation and all the collaborative features that Postman has built out so far, including your commenting experience, workspaces, version control, all of it sort of packaging it, all that together. We built out the first version of GraphQL, and we really hope users like what we have built over here, and we don't see a drop in adoption. So it's
it's very good. I think so. One of the thing actually you mentioned, or one of the things that we in DevRel use a lot is the time to first call to see how successful your API is. Like you want your developer to be as fast as possible to the first time they can call that API and get a successful response. And I feel like looks like everything was built kind of around that idea of like we want people to be as quick as possible to get to that successful query. They get a nice response from the server. So that's super interesting. Tim, do you have any challenges, or did the dev just go smoothly?
No, that Schema Explorer was hard. It was definitely like a really cool challenge to build. But we have one of the nice parts of GraphQL is it encourages you to describe your whole business, but that means 50,000 line schemas. And even crazier was they're all can be recursive, and so it's these really interesting challenges, and there's still some room to improve, I think. But I want to call out one of the nicest parts of secondary parts of the GraphQL community is the GraphQL open source, and so there's quite a strong foundation of parsers and Prettyify or Beautify is kind of built-in ish, and we really want to add let me see support for mocking. And there's
you want me to share your screen maybe?
Sure.
So it's not sharing your screen.
Well, I mean, I was looking anyways, but challenge wise, just to so this is that big one.
Yeah.
And to still make this work quickly as well and
Yeah.
like type normally in here has been a really fun front end challenge for me. And I'll say like one of the most difficult parts, and we still haven't cracked this one, so we're still working on it, but like you're typing in here and like we're really good at searching kind of high level, but one of the issues with GraphQL that makes it so nice is that graph part is that, this thing can rely on this thing, which could rely on, and I don't know a good recursive part of the GitHub API, but you might end up searching for something that's like infinite levels deep of this thing. And so we have to kind of make some trade-offs of like how deep do we search? Do we just like search in the types and then reveal it? There's all these really kind of deep down issues that we had to solve. And this is kind of where this champion feedback was really nice of like, when you're searching for like enterprise, are you just looking for these things or like types as well? And just really trying to get a feel for these kind of not arbitrary, but it's just really a feel thing rather than like this is the right answer. And I wanted to show like honestly, it's probably too much. So I'll call it too much. Let's say you have like another one where you add something like this. And you actually like have it invalid. And you're like, oh, I messed that up. And so one of the things we have is like this one is actually still editable, which is kind of cool. And so like even though like your document is kind of wrong and it won't actually work, to be able to like not like accidentally delete somebody's work. And so that's another thing. The undo and redo are in here, like all these little things. It was really fun challenge, and I know it's how we built it, and it's kind of disappointing to cram the how we built it into like 3 minutes, but
Yeah.
that's kind of how it goes sometimes. But I think we could talk a lot, but I'll say from the open source side of things, it's really interesting. Like there's graphical and some other kind of ways of representing this, and it was really interesting challenge. Just like let's try and approach this with a blank slate, but still be kind of mindful of the work that's been done in this by the community on this. And so we worked a lot with what's called the GraphQL Guild. They're just a really interesting and helpful and smart bunch of developers working on GraphQL that seem to have made a tool for everything and kind of build on that, kind of build some of our own things, and really, I think, made something pretty cool out of it.
Yeah, so there's definitely a theme with like attention to developer experience on that side as well, for sure. There's questions in the chat, so I'm gonna address these questions. How can you test this with the new 25 collections runs a month? Good question. I don't think you can run a GraphQL collection anyway, so that wouldn't affect it. HTTP collections are the only ones that can be run at the moment. But if you feel limited by that 25 collections runs a month, there's other ways to run your collection with the collection schedule runner or schedule collection runner with Newman, with Postman CLI. So there's options out there. I know I've posted that several times in the community forum, but I'll send a link to it in the chat. And there's a bunch of links there on if you actually face that limitation. Well, one option is to use these other things. Another one is to upgrade. And then if you still have issues, you can reach out to product support on postman.com/support, if I recall correctly, and say how this is a blocker for you in Postman. That's the answer to this one. We've got one more question from Patricia, just came in. Hi Tim, how can I connect to GitHub authorization for GraphQL? Since you were demoing that collection.
Yeah, that was. Let's see if we can do it.
Okay, let me know if I should share or not.
No, so one of the nice things with Postman is the secret somewhere in here is my personal access token that I created. They're a little tricky right now with GitHub on how to create them. I assume there's also some OAuth things as well, but as a developer connecting to it, I'd use a personal access token and store it in our authorization bearer token. Other than that, I haven't run into any issues with like needing a special header or anything. I do know, and this might get like dated if you ever watch this video again. They're like currently like a couple different types of access tokens. Like I don't remember the name offhand, but this one is like using the older style, I think.
Yeah.
But I remember like GitHub's API kind of calls out a lot of that. We don't want the REST one. Where's the GraphQL one?
I think you can go on the REST one, and then there's an option for the GraphQL documentation. Oh yeah, how that works.
Let's see. So yeah, as with most API things, a lot of it is all about authentication, but it's mostly this one is the one I've been using. And classic, that was the word I was looking for. So I generated a classic one. I put it in my environments over here. That way it can stay secret, and then used it as a variable in here.
Nice. Cool. So we have 3 minutes left. I know we have a bunch more stuff that we want to go through, but we should be right on time. Before we do the community shoutouts, I know I've asked you both if there was some stuff we were allowed to leak, like to let people know that we were working on. When I say we, I mean that you are working on, because I'm not directly working on these. So yeah, is there anything you can share in under 3 minutes?
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, so I'll just say right now we're on like a monthly cadence of releases, and so our next release is in April. The big one, which we've seen a lot of usage in gRPC, is let's say you've used an API. I'll show you the one I'm using at the moment. We have our mock GitHub API, and I just kind of exported their schema and loaded it in here. And let's say you're like doing some local testing and you don't want to do what Patricia was just asking about, or I think that was your name. I'm sorry, it's on a different screen of like, I don't want to authorize and do all that stuff and it's still not working. And I just want to like know if the request I'm sending will give kind of back what I'm expecting. And so instead you'll use a mock URL. And so because it's schema driven and we have that schema, we can like just kind of create a mock one. And so we can take whatever request you send to it, and like from the schema, we know ID is a string and name is a string as well. And we can kind of like make some random data. And one cool thing is if you want this to be random but not change every time, we actually expose a seed with the response, and you can actually include that with your next request, and that way you'll get a random answer but like the same random answer. And so you can write like a script. And so this is maybe getting a little contrived, but I think there are plenty of reasons to say for like a given request shape, you want it to both like parse. So like maybe like our little mock server will do syntax errors. So you both want it to parse and kind of give the data back that you're expecting in the script. And so that's coming next. I'm finishing it up now, and
It's holding on you. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, it's on me. But I still got a week left. So
Yeah, no, that's actually impressive. I didn't. So mock servers in Postman isn't new. We've had mock servers for other types of requests for a little while, and like whenever I demo it, people are always like pretty impressed or pretty interested in like using it, because there's a lot of advantages. One is like not hitting a production API, or like just working on your own side, etc. That customizable header, like the x-seed one, is very interesting. So it makes it that you do not have to save all your type of responses. You just need to keep the seed then, and then use that as your header.
And yeah, and this is a little different than like these mocks, in that it is like completely generated. Well, we're still exploring kind of ways of having like more standard responses. One of the things with gRPC that we just added was saved examples, like how to kind of integrate all these. And that's kind of where we're still exploring. But this is basically just like you have your schema, and we can kind of fake a response to it, which can be really helpful. And one of the nice things is this is portable, so it's not just in Postman.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to like put it on your website, but if like your front end needs to hit this mock API while you're testing on localhost, it can be great, or some other kind of scenario like that.
Yes. Yeah, I'm very excited for that one. Shobhit, anything you wanted to share?
Right. So actually, Tim just talked about examples. So I'm gonna take the ladder from there. So over the next couple of months, we are working on bringing the GraphQL client experience up to speed with all the other clients we have built so far, which means you can expect features such as saved examples and better request documentation that's, again, as I said, curated just for a GraphQL request. And apart from that, we are also working on improving our offerings on GraphQL specific features like fragments, aliases, directives, and a whole lot more. So a lot of things are in the pipeline. You will see new things popping up real soon.
Nice. Tons of spoilers or teasers. Don't know how to like call them. But yeah, I think that's gonna close our session on how we build GraphQL at Postman. Before we leave, we usually have like a quick community shout out section. I'll start because why not? I just have a quick one for. I mentioned the community forum as a reply to someone's answer. We've got people on the community forum that are always chiming in and always being very helpful. So just a general thank you to people from the community forum that are making our job easier, but hopefully getting something out of it as well, because it's very nice of them to help other people in the Postman community. Tim, do you have a shout out or a recommendation?
I was just going to say the open source community for GraphQL has been awesome. The guild, the foundation, and I'm gonna like plug the Postman app support again, because we really do read it like multiple times a day, and
I'll post a link to it.
Yeah, it's a good way, especially while we're in beta, to say like, did y'all mean to totally break certificates? You're like, oh, sorry, and then we can fix it for you. And so Yeah, and thanks.
Cool. Shobhit.
Right, I'm just gonna command V all your shout outs, but I'm gonna add a recommendation that's actually something that's lying right there in front of me. So this is a book that I recently started reading. It's called The Beauty of Everyday Things. It's by Soitsu Yanagi, and it's a brilliant book on how products are not just how they look, but the beauty of the product lies within the functionalities of the product itself. So what makes a product truly beautiful is how how easy it is to approach it, and how easy it is to sort of do your day-to-day work using that. So if all these parts are not really figured out right, it's not beautiful. So that's the point this book is trying to make. It's a very interesting book with lots of use cases and case studies. Just do give it a read whenever you have time.
That's very good suggestions. I'm gonna add this to my list. All right. Thank you all for joining, for your questions. Thank you both, Tim and Shobhit, for joining me as well and answering my questions. We'll see you all next week. I think we have. Let me quickly see what we have next week for the live stream. I think we actually have like a GraphQL one. So we have people from Zoom joining us next week, and they have a pretty big GraphQL API. So we're actually going to, whatever we've discussed today, we'll put it in practice next week. So it's going to be Pooja hosting and with some people from Zoom, and we play with their GraphQL API and see what happens.
Cool.
Yeah, should be very cool. All right, with that said, have a good day, good evening, good morning, everyone, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.